Positioning is an element that's so foundational of marketing, it's taught in every introductory class alongside the 4 Ps of marketing. Positioning is meant to describe the choices a brand makes to maximize how the market sees it. Positioning is very powerful because it can set perceptions that drive customer loyalty, strong demand, and the willingness to pay a premium. But if all this is true, then why is the landscape littered with examples of where brands flopped? We don't have to look far for these fails. Take Microsoft Zune, because how people thought of MP3 players had already been set by Apple. Take Colgate Frozen Entrees. Sure, both food and toothpaste go in our mouths, but TV dinner brands don't want to leave you with a thought of toothpaste in your head. Harley-Davidson's legendary Cologne. People buy a fragrance for the impression they want to leave, not something that evokes burnt rubber and gasoline. Cosmopolitan yogurt. There are plenty of brands in the dairy aisle. People didn't think a fashion brand belonged there. And Frito-Lay lemonade, marketing a salty snack and chasing it with a beverage, strikes people as cynical and a cash grab. Hey, Glenn here. Welcome to Funnel Reboot, the show for data-based marketers. The reason these brands flopped is they tried positioning themselves on a competitor's turf. The correct way to position yourself is to start with the customer's need and work outward from there. To do this right, we've got to flip the traditional concept on its head. Instead of positioning, the author we'll talk to today says we must deposition ourselves. He's the founder and chief strategy officer of brand strategy firm Phaser. Over 3 decades, he's led strategy for Fortune 500 companies and venture-backed disruptors. He's been featured in the New York Times, Forbes, and MIT Technology Review. Let's go now to New York City to speak with Todd Irwin. Todd Irwin, welcome to Funnel Reboot.
Glenn, hey, great to be here. Thanks for the invite.
I'm very glad to give it. Todd, you wrote a book. What's the name of the book?
The book is called Depositioning, and it's the secret brand strategy for creating competitive advantage. See, I have it memorized.
That's amazing. That's
It's,
great.
it's
All that looking in the mirror paid off. So, Todd, the way that people have been brought up to think about positioning, most, at least my experience, is you've been handed some kooky template, and it sounds very much like positioning is something that you just force into existence by saying our company is this and we do that and we are supposed to be at this end of the market and customers are supposed to think these things about us. Depositioning sounds like something different. What's the difference?
I think if you spend enough time in the brand strategy world, you see the same patterns. I've been doing this for over 3 decades, working with Fortune 500s, Coca-Cola, Verizon, Walmart, luxury brands. I've sat across the table from big VC-backed founders in their first year who are trying to get that first real foothold. Different sized companies, different industries, different budgets, but they all have the same core challenge. They need to compete. They need to, and markets today are really brutal, more crowded, more unforgiving, and every single year it just gets worse and worse. And I've been in rooms where a brand wins the market, rooms where a brand is like losing for so many different reasons. And what I've learned, the difference between the two is never luck. It's never just the budget. It's not even the creative. It's always the strategy. And it's the strategy that they deploy that gets the win. So that's really what pushed me to write the book Depositioning. I want to take everything I've learned from those wins and losses. I want to take everything I've learned from the wins, the losses, high stakes client work and behind the scenes and competitive battles to put it into something practical for CEOs, CMOs, founders, not just a read, not just a nod. But here's the reality. Markets aren't slowing down to give us space to figure it out. Competitors aren't holding back. The shelf life of a competitive advantage is shrinking. You might have an edge today, but tomorrow, the markets are so hyper competitive, like somebody else is working right now to take it. That means the way we think about brand strategy has to change incremental way, not in a sort of tweak the tagline way, like in a fundamental way. I wrote this book, Depositioning, to give marketing executives, marketing leaders a way to compete at a really high level, to see the field differently, to understand what the most competitive brands in the world have been doing, often without even naming it. That allows them to build an advantage and keep it. If you've ever felt like you're doing the work, investing money, creating campaigns, but still getting beaten, like depositioning is for you. It's not theory, it's built on buying science. It's not marketing fluff. It's built for real world competitive advantage. It comes from books like Michael Porter's Competitive Advantage. The thing that's different about depositioning is that it aligns with what the big consultancies do, like the Deloittes and the McKinseys of the world, where they position businesses around solving pain points. So the whole thing with depositioning is you look to what are the customer pain points, right? And how do you solve all of them? And then in positioning, you want to own a singular idea. So you try to find what is the most important customer pain point and position the brand around the solution. And by doing that, you will deposition your competitors. That's the essence of it. And what
Yeah,
most agencies do is they focus on being different, unique selling proposition, the USP. How do we be unique, right? How can we find the intersection between differentiation and creativity and find a gap in the market? There are no gaps left. Gaps are
yeah,
gone.
yeah,
People are propping businesses up today in an hour. It's so easy to do. There's so much clutter. So yeah, it's all
yeah.
about hype being as competitive as possible.
Yeah, I love that
So
mindset. And just you said in the book, you said, don't look for white space. And I think we've been habituated to thinking, oh, this is a game where we're supposed to like try and find an empty spot on a board, like it's a board game.
yeah,
No, it's nothing like that. And when you alluded to the management consultancies, we're not trying to turn marketers into those people. But what you meant was we're supposed to follow what they have been doing when they do strategy work, which is focusing on the problem. And they're
that's
very
right.
good at identifying that. And then how is the rest of what you do, how does that form a solution to that problem?
Yeah, it's a different way. Some people hear this and they're like, "What does that mean that creativity isn't as important?" No, the creativity is actually more important, but it's how you brief the creatives, okay? And so what's happened is at all these big agencies, they're run by creatives. And so creatives have these egos. We want to win awards and we want to be more creative than the next person. So they ignore the playbooks that the business consultancies give them and they say, okay, let's be as creative as possible. Let's be
Yeah,
different. And I think I've been saying this for a while. As brilliant as Steve Jobs and Apple, as brilliant as they are, right? Apple just, I think they did a disservice to the creative world, to the agency world. The whole think different idea. Steve Jobs wasn't trying to be different for the sake of it. He
yeah,
was trying to create a better product. He was always depositioning his competition. That was the pathway to differentiation. He didn't start out with trying to be different. He started out with trying to create something better, whether it was the Macintosh or the iPod or the iPhone, or now what they're doing with privacy, which is
right. At
great.
each step, they keep doing that. They cohere with the customer's needs, right?
That's right.
This is, of course, how they became from a two-person entity in a garage to one of the
Yeah.
world's largest brands. It wasn't about the technology. They were trying to solve real problems in a way that was accessible and useful. And I think that
Yeah.
was maybe a big part of the difference was at
Yeah.
the time, for those like you and I who remember back then, the idea of computer was, oh, you need to be a computer engineer or a computer programmer to use a computer. And he's, no, it's like a bicycle for the mind. Just get
That's
in
right.
and play.
That's right. Yeah. I remember when computers first showed up in business, right? And you had to go and take a course on how to use a computer. And it took 2 weeks, maybe sometimes 4 to 6 weeks. It took some
Yikes.
time. Most people didn't know how to figure it out, and it was hard. And he created the Macintosh, which a 4-year-old could use.
Yeah.
And they just do it, they do it over and over again. And the thing about them is they really, Jobs really understood brand at a deep level. That's what coherence means. That's like coherence is not clarity. clarity, the way I see clarity, and by the way, clarity is incredibly important, but I see clarity at a messaging level. Coherence is when the customer understands deeply, like almost like in their soul,
Yeah.
what the company stands for. What did Apple stand for before they stood for privacy? They stood for usability. They created user experience. Computer companies before Apple, the user experience was so complex, it was not even called user experience. It was called just, this is freaking hard. Apple created
Submenus and
user
all
experience.
that. And they went to
That's
things
right.
like material design, right? If I were to
Folders.
look at a desk and that icon represents something that I pick up on my desk, then I can use
That's
it.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you say the customer actually doesn't see the brand as a choice, they see the brand as part of who they are. It's actualizing their own identity too.
Right. Because when you buy something, the first part of your buying journey is you identify a problem that you have and you need a solution. And throughout that whole journey, you're trying to solve it. That's what depositioning is. That's what Apple does. Now, at the highest level, so right now, they're doing it with privacy. They anchor everything into privacy, right?
Yep.
Because they can. What's the biggest pain point in the market? Everybody's afraid of their data being stolen. So Google, Amazon, Meta, right? Everybody's afraid of that data being stolen. Apple can deliver on privacy. They position the brand that way, but it's you understand that's what they stand for at a deep level. That's what coherence is. But then they integrate it deep into the company. It's product, it's organization, it's their people. Like it goes deep. I'm always blown away, like when we get on a phone call with a founder, or CEO, or CMO, and they still think is about logos and taglines. It still happens, or
Yeah.
campaigns.
Or
That's
maybe
not what it
having
is.
a product that is first to market. And Apple showed time and time again they weren't first. What they did when they weren't first was they watched what the competitors did and didn't repeat their mistakes.
That's exactly correct. Apple understands that the business is the brand. The business is the brand. It's that deep.
Yeah.
It's a pretty amazing company. So
Let's talk for a second about a different company that you mentioned in the book, Airbnb. And I know you were a kind of a fan of Hiroki Asai, a guy who moved over, I think, from Apple to
yeah.
Airbnb. Tell me why you think he's a modern depositioning expert.
Them and Uber, they found a way to deposition a whole market. Anytime you have a case study or you see a company like that, it's not just going after one competitor. They're actually changing the way that people buy something with a platform, and they flip the whole market around. Now, you had VRBO or Verbo, however you say it. By the
Yeah.
way, they need to change their name because nobody knows how to say it. But VRBO was out there first, but they just didn't know how to create the experience and market to it. And Airbnb came in, Hiroki came in, and he was like, listen, here's what we can do. We can completely redesign the whole user experience to make it so frictionless. We're not only going to deposition VRBO, it's going to be everything. They depositioned hospitality, right? I mean, they became a competitor to Marriott and Hilton and Hyatt. It's just that is an incredible case study. Again, Uber also, same thing. They did the same exact thing. They depositioned the whole market. These case studies are amazing. And the fact that we're seeing this happen over the last 20, 25 years, I
Yeah.
think is pretty remarkable. And you're seeing it too now with AI, these AI companies, right? The way that OpenAI and Gemini and Anthropic are attacking each other and just the war in the market is fascinating, really fascinating.
Just Airbnb and others, they're trying to get to something that is quite a vulnerable and personal aspect of the user experience. So
Yeah,
take
yeah,
Airbnb. I myself have been 500 miles from home and late at night, and I could be walking into a hotel lobby where I know there's going to be a guest manager, but instead I put my faith in Airbnb. And when there was some issue with the lock or me being able to
yeah.
get to where I needed to be, they came through. And they knew that they had to not just carry it in the marketing, but all the way through to post sale. You say that's where the customer actually witnesses you delivering on solving that problem that you said you would. And that's the thing that is required for depositioning it. More than just saying we're doing it, you have to actually do it.
You have to act it. You have to walk the walk. What I just was just saying about the business is the brand, integration, coherence. Integration, if you look at Airbnb, just what you were saying now about all the way down through every step of the experience,
Yep.
they're solving every single problem. Yes, brand positioning is about owning a singular idea in the mind of the customer. Apple owns privacy, Volvo owns safety, but they deliver it through at every step and it never ends. And so they own the solution to that one hero pain point, but there are pillars that stand up that positioning. And those are other pain points, right? Apple has shifted their advertising money into post-purchase because they're creating this environment. That's one of the smartest strategies in the history of business, right? Everybody was spending all their money on advertising 25 years
Oh,
ago, and right
yeah.
now
And even in the
it's
last 10 years, it's been programmatic display, and people are in a frenzy with all the performance based marketing that is trying
yeah.
to just focus on acquisition.
That's right. Apple spends on post-purchase. Why? Because they get you into their environment, they get you into their ecosystem, and you're there and you're in a place where you love. Why would you leave? It's pretty amazing what they do.
Let's talk for a second about the way that someone can start to work through and think of these pillars. So you talk about people thinking about a dimension, right? A dimension of what the customer is looking for. The most obvious one that we all go to, I suppose, is an economy to luxury kind of dimension,
Yep,
but there's millions of them.
sure.
And then you say you want to figure out how to put yourself at one pole of that dimension, and by doing so, toss your competitors all to the other side. Are there
Yeah,
any examples you can think of to give us of that, or maybe walk us through the steps that your team does when
sure.
you're like thinking, or maybe Samsung, or I know you use the Samsung and Google Android example to make it really
Yep,
clear for
yep.
people.
I think what would be helpful is to explain how we do it. When we're immersing ourselves into a project with a client, there's two things that we're looking at, right? We're looking at customers and their pain points. So we're making long lists of pain points, looking at customer journeys and compiling all the pain points to try to get to that place where we can figure out what is the one hero pain point, or maybe there's two or three that we could potentially own. So that's number one. So we're looking at customers really closely and figuring out what is their pain. The second thing we're doing is we're looking at competitors, right? And what are the weaknesses that they have? Everybody's trying to solve pain points, but
Ah,
businesses have to solve pain points, right?
yep.
The bottom line is that you're looking at customers' pain points, you're looking at competitor weaknesses, and then how do you find the solution to those main pain points, and specifically what we call the hero pain point? And solve first of all, the first thing you have to do is as a business you have to solve it, but then you need to figure out how to communicate your solution and in a way that you deposition your competitors and exploit those weaknesses. So how it's a shift away from, like I mentioned earlier, what most agencies are doing, which they're looking at differentiation, how to be different, and they're looking about how to be creative. So there's the
Yeah.
intersection of differentiation and creativity, or bringing those two together. And at the end of the day, yes, that might get you something that's unique, but it might be completely irrelevant. We see this a lot. Brands come
And
to us and like, yeah, we hired this fancy schmancy agency and it cost us hundreds of thousands of dollars. And we got this kind of really cool, beautiful brand, but it's not working. Why is it not working? And we look at it and we're like, that's easy. What are you selling? What's the pain point that you're solving? You're not solving anything. You're being clever, but nobody remembers, like, tactically from a communication standpoint, what are you delivering? People don't get it, and people don't have time for brands to be overly creative. The markets get more cluttered because they get more competitive. You don't
Todd,
have
I got
keyboard.
to clarify though, I have to stop you.
Sure.
As a head of a New York based agency, telling me that it's not all about winning creative awards?
Yes, it's
You mean
not.
we actually, it's okay for us to be, dare I say, dull by working correctly on positioning instead?
By the way, it doesn't mean you have to be dull. Brands
Okay,
can still have distinction and personality. That's
right.
okay.
But you're
But
anchored to the depositioning.
do you think Apple's dull?
Nope.
No, exactly. If you analyze their website or any of their communications in their stores, they're consistently just solving your problem at the highest level, at the headline level. But they do it with the copy is beautifully written. The images are beautifully shot or videotaped to show my age. The images are beautiful. The copy is beautifully written. It's just designed so well. It's creative as hell, but it's the focus. It's creativity for the sake of it, differentiation for the sake of it, which is what most agencies focus on.
Correct.
That's the issue.
Yeah, caused by the economics of an agency trying to stand out in a very competitive market itself. So they have at that point maybe not done what serves the client best, but maybe what is
Yeah.
trying to serve them best.
Agreed. Creative people have egos. They want to win awards. They want to be better than the next. They want to win at Cannes. They want to win at the One Club. They want to win at DNAD, all that stuff. And that's their motivation a lot of the time.
Yeah, and I think that it unfortunately rolls downhill to the customer. I think when you have agencies that are trying too hard to do those things or maybe to tout, to puff up the brand, it ends up,
Yep.
the brand ends up through that creative sounding like they're reading you their resume.
Yeah.
And that's a
Yeah.
total turnoff for a customer.
Yeah. Totally.
There's a very nice hotel in New York City, which I won't name, but everyone knows it. And it's a venerable old brand. There are many venerable old buildings in New York City that have lovely hotels in them. But the cryptic message that they had in this ad was, we are an icon. Like, okay, so what that you're an icon? Do I want to stay at your hotel? Would you lure me to New York to come and stay in your hotel? That to me is sometimes we just lose track of what we're trying to do. You
Yeah.
mentioned one part, and I think it's the glue here. You call it integration. So,
Yeah.
can you take us through what integration is and how it fits into depositioning?
Yeah, it's a great question. Integration is really the antithesis of what most marketers think brand is, right? The logo and the tagline. Integration is when you come up with a brand strategy and it's not just marketing, it's not just your voice or what you're communicating. It's built into how you design your products, how you develop your culture at your organization, how you treat your customers. It is the organization living and breathing every ounce of what the brand stands for. The one thing about integration that the way when we do integration workshops, we start with brand, right? And
Yep.
we're looking at markets, we're looking at customers and competitors, like I mentioned before. And what comes out of those workshops are product ideas, right? True integration is taking brand to the deepest level of the organization and the brand just or the organization just living and breathing brand. That's what integration is. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
to do it, I think you're asking marketers to show leadership. And you got to tell me, Todd, have you ever had moments with a marketer where they're willing to share in a moment of confidence? They don't know if they've got that kind of stature in their organization, if they've commanded that kind of respect, if they're up to the task. And what would you
Yeah.
say to that marketer?
Yeah. Listen, integration is a hard thing to execute on. And to be honest with you, it needs to be integrated at the CEO level. I think the good thing about integration and CMOs understanding what integration is that integration is something that the CMO needs to sell into the CEO. It actually will create some glue between them, which, by the way, there needs to be glue there, but it needs to be executed on from the top down. And that means above the CMO from the
Okay.
CEO. So it's about the CMO selling the idea of integration to the CEO buying it and then saying to everybody else in the C suite or the GLT or ELT that, hey, we're going to stand for this and we're going to build it into everything we do. We stand for beauty. Okay. We're going to create beautiful products. Okay. So let's get rid of those products because they don't fit our brand positioning. I think there's an interesting case study about Disney. This goes back, I think, about 20 or 30 years ago. It was a big branding agency that was doing a repositioning of Disney. I had heard this as a story from somebody at this agency, but it's an interesting story. Walt Disney was an entrepreneur. He bought like all these businesses. So Disney was this company they owned trucking companies, they owned pizza chains. He was just buying everything. New leadership came in and they did this big brand positioning project. And what they found out was that Disney stood for this one thing, and it was magic. It was magic. And so they're like, we got to stand for magic, right? And so what did they do? they integrated into the business and they sold off all the companies that didn't stand for magic, the trucking companies, the pizza chains, et cetera,
Right.
et cetera. And what did they do? They bought Pixar. They bought Pixar. Now I remember it's in the Creativity Inc. book,
Ah, okay. Ed
which is a
Catmull.
great book.
We'll
Yeah,
put that in the
great
show
book.
notes.
Yeah, it's a great book. They bought Pixar, and look what it did to their company. But they stood for something, okay, at the brand level, but they integrated it deep into the business. And that's what I'm
Yeah.
talking about as far as the business is the brand and vice versa. So yeah, Disney is a great example of that. Great example.
Oh, that's very cool. And when these things are all pulled together, one of the things that really stood out to me was when you said that it's rising beyond the logo and the tagline. Companies may have campaign specific taglines. If you ask me what that is for a company like Apple, I don't know, who knows? But I do know what their brand means. So even though I don't know what it says, I know what it feels like and I know what it means. And I think that when depositioning is done correctly, that's what we're left with.
That is what I mean. That's where clarity or coherence comes in.
Right.
So, step one is be customer first. Step two is find the hero pain point to solve, know your competitor's weaknesses, but deliver it at a deep level and deliver it in a way that's so clear and coherent to the customer. There's the old saying, if people don't get you in 3 seconds, they turn their back on you, right?
Yeah.
The old adage of an ad only works after they've seen it 6 times, right? Because people are walking down the street or scrolling down the whatever with blinders on so much because there's
Right.
so much out there, right? So you have to be as clear and coherent as possible. If you analyze Apple's communications, that's what's so brilliant about it. It's so clear. You get it, bam, like that.
Amazing. You've done a great job on breaking down the process for people in the book. And if people want to get the book, Todd, where would they go?
Amazon
Amazon.
positioning is on that, yes.
And if they want to find out about you, about your agency, Phaser, where would you like to send them?
Our URL is phaser, Fazer.agency.
And you're
Yeah.
available on places like LinkedIn.
I am on LinkedIn, yes. Buy the book on Amazon.
Todd, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Thanks, Glenn. It was fun.
I know it gave folks a way to think about their marketing and their branding and think of ways to make it even better.
Thanks for listening. Follow the show on Twitter @Funnel Reboot. If you like what you have heard today, please consider leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts.